Back in the studio with Baptist preacher,
Come on.
Baptist pastor, Aaron Alonzo. Aaron, one, I want to say a big thank you for hopping in the studio, man. Thanks for coming over.
Anytime, my bro. Anytime.
So anyway, I have a bunch of questions about you and your journey. I know we ran into each other a few times in the neighborhood running. Our story actually also goes back to our high school days. So anyway, I'm excited to jump in with you and to get into it. So first I want to find out a little bit how, your story of coming to faith. Tell me what that was like and what that was about, and how that worked out for you.
So man, it's a great comeback story. One that's helped me and my wife within our ministry. So I could take you back 10 years. Actually, let's go back a little bit further than that. Me and my wife got married, and we had been married for a minute. And the life that I grew up with,
yeah,
I'd say right after high school, got a little rough, got into some things I shouldn't have been getting into. Some things my parents definitely not proud to hear about, but
yeah,
they helped. The story is one that I got into some drugs, into some alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people that I hung out with and stuff, they that's what we did when we had a good time.
Yeah.
Fast forward, me and my wife, we get married and we do it all backwards, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my daughter first, then my son. We get married, and then we get a house, right?
Yeah.
It's totally backwards.
Yeah.
Well, then we're living our life. We're doing good. We're working. My wife is working. I'm going to school. I'm trying to get my education. But I couldn't let go of the drinking. And so how it goes is I would drink. I didn't know when to stop.
Mm.
My wife was ready to come home, so I wasn't. So essentially she would say, all right, I'm going home. You coming with me or not? Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't.
Yeah.
And there were nights where I did come home. She fell asleep, and I would take right back off. Well, she got to a point where she says, you know what? I got 2 kids. My wife was raised in church, so she knew better.
Yeah.
When I say she knew better, she knew the life that we were living was one in sin. So she would take off to church in the morning, man. On Sunday mornings, I'm getting up with the kids, and I would mock her. I would mock her when she would leave I'd be hungover on the couch.
Yeah.
And I would say, don't forget to pray for me. She did.
Hmm.
So we got to a point where I would say, you know what, I'm going to stop drinking. So I would for 3 months. I'd be an angel. And then, I would fall right back into it.
Yeah.
Fall right back into it. Well, we got to a point where we went out into Austin, went to a party, and let's just say I had way too much to drink. I don't remember much of the trip driving back from Austin to San Antonio, but we really got into it really bad. And so she said, you know what, I can't do this no more. I'm going to file for divorce. And I knew I had, and I heard that word, and we used that word in the past, but this time I knew she meant it.
Yeah.
And it's tough when you get faced with, you know what, that's it, we're done. She went and saw a lawyer. And at that point, man, I knew I needed to change my life.
Mm.
It was a conversation I had with my mother-in-law. I called my mother-in-law, and I said, I apologize for the way I treated your daughter. And she doesn't deserve it. And she said, just leave it in God's hands. And I said, nobody ever talked to me about God. First time I heard something like that, I said, what do you mean?
Yeah.
She said, just leave it in God's hands. She said, "Why don't you start reading the Bible? Read Psalms and Proverbs." I said, "Okay." At this point, we were separated, and I was living in my parents' house, back with them again.
Yeah.
That was horrible. Sleeping on a bunk bed with Toy Story toys and stuff all around. Let's just say I would turn over and I had a dinosaur coming out my back. Very uncomfortable. But I had a Bible. I remember that conversation. Funny enough, that Bible is one that my Uncle Gabriel gave me. And he's gone right now. He passed away a few years back. But he had given me a Bible when we were drinking. We were both getting drunk, and he said, "Here, mijo, here's a Bible." And I actually had a picture of his ex-wife in there. He said, "I need that back." And so I had that Bible in the middle console of my truck.
Yeah.
So I go out to the truck, and I pull it out, and I just open it, and I started reading. And I've never read a book that talked back to me. And these little feelings stirred up in me, and I had no idea what they were. So I just kept reading. And then I started texting my wife scriptures because they just started speaking to me. And I asked her if it was okay if I keep going back to my church. You know, we were going back and forth. And the reason I wanted to go back to that church is because right before all of this happened, Derek, my pastor is up there and he says, he's preaching, and his words were, "You need to learn easy. Learn easy." And I was trying to schedule my salvation because I was getting stirred already.
Yeah.
You know, I was getting stirred. He gave the invitation for salvation. My hands are sweating. My heart's pounding. I'm sweating. Sitting in the chair, and he's like, "Just come on up and just give your heart to Jesus." And I was like, "You know what? I can't, because I got this party coming up. And if I get saved, that means I can't drink."
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Maybe after this Austin party, I'll get saved. Well, we never made it, right? That party was pretty much what messed us up or messed me up.
Yeah.
And so I tried to schedule my salvation, and I couldn't. But I asked my wife, "Is it okay if I go back to church?" And she thought, I just want to see her and kids. I did want to see her and my two kids. But I also wanted to hear the word. And so I started going back, and I felt that stirring again in my soul, the spirit, right, getting me.
Yeah.
And I remember getting saved. And I gave my heart to Jesus that day, 10 years ago. And I remember the feeling. I can't remember the date. Some people know the date of their salvation, but I remember the feeling, Derek. I said, "You know what, Lord, I just need your help. I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
I've been trying for years, and I can't do it. I need you."
Yeah.
So he gave the invitation. He said, "Come on, walk up here, those of you that raised your hand for salvation." And I remembered, like, I felt like it was just my pastor and me in that building. And I walk up, I felt like I was by myself. Well, I went up there, they prayed for me. I turned around, and I see everybody in my church. And I just like turned around, I see everybody standing and clapping and rejoicing. And I'm like, man, what is this feeling? And that's how that story went.
Yeah.
For my salvation, my come to Jesus moment.
Yeah. And how long ago was that?
It was 10 years around this time.
All right, 10 years. Okay.
Yes.
And then also I wanted to ask you your parents, because you and I were at an event on Friday for the marriage groups, the marrieds in your church, and your parents were there. You know, and I was like, so you had invited me to it, and I again, for whatever reason, not that you had to tell me your parents were going to be there, but it was an added bonus to like meet your parents.
Right.
And I was like, because there's times when you meet people in the journey of faith where it's something that they do. Sometimes it's something that the parents do. Sometimes, and then a few times, you know, it's something that a family will do together, or like multi-generational family will do together. So were your parents always in that church? Were your parents always people of faith, or what's their kind of connection with everything?
My parents moved out of the hood where we grew up, right there in the Highlands area, and they went out to Floresville. And my dad was like, he's ready to get out of the hustle and bustle of the hood, and it wasn't so good anymore as it was before.
Yeah.
Me, my brother, my sister out the house, and it was just them by themselves, and they started going back to church with my grandmother's brother, my Uncle Benno. He's been a pastor and he's got a story. But they were at that church with him, and my dad rededicated his life, and so did my mom. And they went through, a baptism and everything, just so that it was just, to profess a public profession of that rededication.
Yeah.
And so they went before I did. And so my parents were starting to talk to me about Jesus a little bit here and there, and like, you need to change your life. And so fast forward, they started coming to our church. I had kept inviting them, Dad, why don't you come to our church? And they would come to our married couples events.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And then, then they decided, it's time to move on from the church they were, and they came with us. So they've been a part of the church for the last 3 years.
Oh, okay, very nice. So are they still in Floresville, or they moved?
Yeah, they're still in Floresville.
Okay, so they make that commute though.
Yes, they do.
Big time.
Faithfully every Sunday.
Love that. All right, and then so they had recommitted themselves. You said after you guys had moved out, so I guess after you guys were, out of high school,
gone.
you guys were gone.
Family started everything.
Got it. So in high school, it wasn't was faith a big part of like their emphasis for you guys?
No.
Okay.
We unfortunately we did a lot of the dirty stuff together. So the family that's the way we were growing up.
Okay, gotcha. And then the evolution for you. So 10 years ago, like you go through this transformation personally, and then present day. One of the things that I appreciated about you is when we ran into each other a few times in the neighborhood. I always think Christian flexes are a Christian potentially has so many different ways to flex, and I'm always fascinated by which ways they choose to flex. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not like I'm not even talking about arrogant boasting. I'm just talking about there's so much goodness in your life at any point in time that you can say good things, and it's like. And so with my friends and I, we'll tease about different things that come up. Like, let's say if you happen to baptize a friend or somebody like that, and you're telling a story about him, and you casually mention, oh yeah, this guy, this friend of mine who I baptized. It's like, hey, why do you add that who you baptized as part of the introduction or information you were providing? So we kind of talk about that Christian flex. So one of them that happens within Christian communities is when people mention. When you talk about God and talk about church, they'll mention their own role in the church, like being a pastor. So one of the things I did appreciate about you is I don't recall you mentioning that in the few times that we had interacted. We were running in the neighborhood because again, it could be a flex. It's true. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as being the associate pastor. So tell me, was that intentional, one, and then two, how you came to become associate pastor.
So me and my wife actually started in the marriage ministry, and the story is, and I've told it many times at my church, is the leaders of the ministry at that time, Jake and Nina, they came up to us and they said, this is during the time of our restoration process. Me and my wife decided after she saw a change in me, and she says, you know what, I'll give you another shot.
Yeah.
Right. And so I moved back into the house. And we're going to church together, and we're just there faithfully, right? And they decided, you know what? Let's ask that couple to join the ministry, and we're in the restoration process, right? So they come to us.
In that phrase, what does that phrase mean? To join the ministry, does that mean be leaders, or does that mean?
Yes.
Okay. So why are you going to the restoration process? They're like, hey, like. Right. Interesting. Yeah.
So they come. We're sitting in the parking lot, getting ready to leave. They come both sides of the door. Hey, we noticed y'all are coming to church, and how about you join the ministry team with us and chopping it up with us? So they said, join the team. So they walk away, and me and my wife, we look at each other, and we start laughing. And we said, man, they have no idea how jacked up we are. And they're asking us to be a part of that ministry. No way we can do that. We're not even all the way back, right? The restoration process takes a minute to get through.
Yeah.
And needless to say, we sat on it for a good while. We prayed about it. And what it was, and how it came to be is essentially it's like you have a testimony to share.
Yeah.
You need to talk about what God did to you, which was me, in our marriage, and how he got us back.
Yeah.
And so that's how we joined the ministry team. How I came to be in
So this was still this was 10 years ago. This is all happening.
This is, I would say, about 7 years ago. Now we're getting it. No, I would say now it's right through. Yeah, 10 years ago.
Okay.
10 years ago. So 10 years, and then we're going through the restoration process.
And tell me again, as an outsider who knows nothing about even the restoration process for your church, what is that? What is it like? And you even hinted and mentioned that it could be a lengthy time.
Right. Right.
So tell me more.
Well, because there was the restoration process. It's not like, hey, we're gonna be okay and everything's normal the next day.
Yeah.
There was some hurt, and there was some trust issues that my wife had.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation, and I'm talking about tears in your eyes, heartfelt, emotional conversations where we stayed up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning just trying to work it out, and a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
A lot of encouragement from our church. We didn't have a counselor go through it with us. We leaned on the Bible. We leaned on each other, and the ministry, helped out and whatnot. And it took a good while for us to kind of get back. And then I think being part of the ministry team really helped us, being able to do that. Sharing our testimony with others. It was a healing process for us as well.
Yeah. So
we joined the ministry team, and they asked me to speak. Like, hey man, you got a testimony. You mind sharing that with the church? And I said, yeah, of course. This time I'm saved. I'm telling everybody about Jesus. You know about Jesus? You know about Jesus? You know about Jesus? Yeah. You got that spirit in you that's just
the zeal. Yeah.
And that fire they talk about, right? So the first time I spoke, I just gave my testimony, and people were like, man, that was amazing. One sister, Stephanie Sierra, she said, you're going to be a pastor one day. I said, no, sister. Hey, no way.
No, sister.
No. And yes, you are. The way you speak and how you do this, and you're built for it. Nope. And she would tell me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. So I keep speaking. I love to just talk.
And what's the frequency at this point? Like, I guess
it was the same thing, once a month. So I would say maybe every 3 or 4 months. I'd speak for the married couples only. Though.
Yeah, and is this like a 5-10 minute thing, or is it a 30-minute, 45-minute thing?
30, 45.
30, 45.
So it went from just giving the testimony to then I started giving lessons, activities, things that we learned. We went on a marriage retreat, my wife and I. Things that I learned there, I brought them back, and I'm like, we need to do these. This is amazing. Yeah. So it's kind of like learn these things, and I need to share that with everybody. It's something you did with us, right? You gave us a book. You're like, here's a book. You read it, but here's another one. And share it. Mm-hmm. It's a gift that keeps on giving. Yeah. And so I couldn't keep that. That's not right to have all that information. I help another family out. So I kept doing that, but I remember one time I went to my pastor and I said, hey, is it okay that I'm speaking at these marriage events? And
because after the first one, and then they just asked you like immediately for the next one, or they waited a couple of weeks and they asked you.
Yeah, they waited a while, and they were like looking for a speaker and whatnot. And so, hey man, and then I was asking too, hey, you need somebody? Just let me know. I'll be ready to speak.
Yeah.
And so I loved it, bro. I just love sharing about the goodness of God. And so I went to my pastor and I said, hey, am I breaking any rules by speaking?
That's real. That's a real experience.
He said, no, you don't need a pastor title to speak.
Right.
Everybody should be talking about Jesus. So that's how it went. And so eventually they said, you know what, man, we end up taking over the ministry, my wife and I. And then they asked me, what you think about being a pastor? And I was like, whoa.
So give me a time perspective. So there you go. Again, 10 years ago, it starts. You guys are going through the restoration yourself. You're sharing your testimony. They ask you to do it again, and then it seems like it's a once a month thing. And then how long is that before?
From 10 years, I would say at year 3, that's when they were asking to be a part of the ministry, pastoral ministry. So then we went through what was called a PIT. They would call us, me and my boy Ralph Ramos, Pastor Ralph now. We were pastors in training. We were part of the PIT group, they would say.
Okay, so, but then how many years would you say your restoration stuff was?
It took us a good year.
So a year. So it was like the 10 years. So it was a year of that, and then it was the testimony, and then it was the monthly speaking, and then it was you were asking about, hey, is this okay? And then it was moving into pastors in training, the PIT. PIT.
So we did that for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. Where
Yeah.
our pastor would talk to us, and he would just, break down some things with us. If we had any questions about some scripture, we would speak here and there, but not the frequency was a little less until they felt comfortable enough for us to be part of the team.
It was less than you had been before, or it was less than you're doing now?
Less from the pulpit. So I was still doing the small ministry stuff and teachings, but nothing from the pulpit.
Nothing from the in that. Again, I know I'm asking like basic questions, but the pulpit, does that mean nothing from Sundays? Sundays.
Sunday,
Okay.
right. So it's like when you're growing up and you're playing sports, right? You play on Fridays to play the Saturday, and you play on Saturday to play Sunday, right? That's high school, college, NFL. Same thing with us. That's what it felt like, getting us ready for those Sundays, big event.
Yeah, got it. So then that goes on. So pastors in training, how long does that go?
It was about 2 years.
2 years.
2 years, and like I said, we would meet with our pastor, and he talked to us about certain things. We were reading books, and he would share like how to write a sermon, and how to prepare, and how to outline, and kind of just teaching us what he knew.
Yeah.
And so we went through a lot of that. We were also filling the pulpits in other churches. So while we didn't speak at our church, our church is part of the San Antonio Baptist Association.
Yeah.
My pastor, Sammy Lopez, his father is part of that as well, and he's a church planner. They also, when churches, pastor unfortunately may pass away or just, get away from ministry, they would find out the church needed a pulpit to be filled.
Yeah.
So they would reach out to us and say, hey, anybody want to preach in Cotulla, Texas? Anybody San Marcos?
Oh,
Seguin?
cool, yeah.
So we go out to these First Baptist, Primera Iglesias, and go out there and preach.
Yeah. Okay. So then during the pastors in training, how often were you preaching then?
Man, let's say once a quarter.
Once a quarter. Yeah.
It wasn't very often.
And then was there a decision needed by you guys? Again, like when it came to, is there a difference between joining the team versus becoming an associate pastor? Like somebody could join the team and never do an associate pastor?
Right.
So then did you and your wife had to walk through this like process of like, hey, like it's one thing to do this level, right? But then it's like the next level, and I'm going upward, but I think most people in ministry understand upward is really downward as far as like serving more people. So was there a pause and and figure out if this is what God wants, or is this what we should do as far as becoming that associate pastor?
I knew I had a calling.
There we go.
So through this, I told my pastor, man, I think I'm called to do this.
Yeah.
And he said, bro, I've known for a minute. And so and I had to explain to him.
Yeah.
Like, I feel my role is to continue to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Also to support you, because being a pastor, senior pastor of a church is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And he was being spread thin. And I told him that's what I'm here for. Number one is I have the calling. Number two is to support you.
Amen. Yeah.
And our church, through some counseling sessions. Because me and my wife, as ministry leaders, and getting close with our congregation, we started to counsel other couples. And they knew our story, so they could relate.
Yeah. So then we have the calling, which he saw it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Which I totally relate to people seeing things and then saying things, and then sometimes they don't make sense as much. Now, had God been cultivating some of your gifting in the professional space before even you were using it in the Christian space?
Correct. So doing presentations and being a leader at work, you have to go to these speaking engagements, or you present to your own team or to other departments. So I was very familiar with speaking in front of people. Mm-hmm. And so it was just natural.
Yes.
Kind of to go from the professional to the church and just be able to speak and teach. And that's what it is for me.
Right. Which I think it's pivotal to, as believers, you're reaching out to people. I'm just thinking about the teams that you were on. before you were even, a believer, before you were with Jesus, and like maybe like some of the Christians would see, like sometimes as Christians we're in the workplace and we see people who have a gifting, right? You see a gifting of communication or a gifting of their people skills and being able to connect, because you've always been like people oriented. Yeah, I remember like even from high school you were I think encouraging, laid back, chill, fun to be around. Like that seemed to be more of like your ethos or your personality. Like you're a people person.
So if you go to Gallup Strengths Finder, I'm called a woo.
There we go. Whoa, yeah.
Woo. So I'm the guy that comes in and just people, right? I just love to connect and talk.
Yep. Yes. Which Gallup Strength Finder, from the woo's perspective, I often get confused with the woo because I possess the gifts of communication and positivity, focusing, achieving, and maximize. Those are like the five. Mm-hmm. But it's not. I don't have woo. But it can look like it if you're not aware of like the difference between somebody who can communicate positively versus somebody who woos. Right. They can be connected, but they also can be different.
That's the thing about the Strengths Finder, right? You just because you don't have the woo, don't mean you ain't a woo. You got some other things in there that are similar. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have the evolution of becoming a pastor. Was there a conversation with wifey about like, hey, is this for us? Is this not for us?
Definitely. So, like I said, my wife grew up in church.
Yeah,
and she's actually been a part of Mighty Fortress Church since its birth.
Yeah, since the get-go.
Pastor Jerry Salinas was the man. Oh, I enjoyed his preaching, and he actually married us a few months before he passed, and I went to be with the Lord, and there's a whole nother story there. If we got time later, we can get into that relationship with Pastor Jerry. But she grew up in the church, and so she's seen pastors and seen the struggle, and so as soon as I told her, I said, hey, babe, I think this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And I said, I talked to Pastor Sammy about it, and she's like, what'd he say? Anybody knows my wife knows the way she is. And so I said, hey, the pastor says, me and Ralph Ramos, right? He's one of our pastors there now. I think, we're up. And so she's like, oh, no, we needed to sit and talk to Pastor. So he already had said, no, man, I need to talk with you and the wife. And so she had more questions than I did because I was ready to jump in.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'll be associate pastor. Let's go. I'm ready, right? I'm chomping at the bit. And she's like, pump your brakes. Pump your brakes.
Wisdom.
I don't think you really know what that means. And so we sat and we talked to Pastor, and she asked him 100 questions, and then she'd look at me, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, babe, I'm ready. I'm good. This is what I want to do. Yes. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So then it's that conversation. Then, and so how long have you been in IT? So you're director of IT stuff now.
Right. So my current role, which I don't like sharing titles, but it is executive director of IT for San Antonio ISD. I've been with them total of 19 years.
Oh, man.
So I've been with the district the last 15, 16 in IT.
Yeah. Okay. So hearing that, it's not surprising like how much personal development you've probably gone through in the 19 years and going through all of that. Again, like it's almost like God shaping you and preparing, equipping you for even a lot of what you're doing now.
Correct. And so I've been in leadership for the last 6 years. Being a director, now moving up to executive director. And the things that I've learned in church have transitioned how I lead a team.
Yeah.
It's that servant leadership, right?
Yeah.
Servant leadership. It's not about me. It's about you.
Right.
And that's the attitude that I've taken into my team.
Yeah. And then, so bring it back to the neighborhood running. So we're running. You don't mention you're a pastor. You don't mention the title, which again, I always like. So I'll give you an example. So is it Daniel Chavez? Is the guy, the other guy at your church, another pastor?
Daniel Cavazos.
Okay, Daniel Cavazos. He mentioned it to me, and I think it was perfect timing for him to do that when I was there on Friday. So when I was there on Friday, naturally, you get there and then got the books and trying to figure out where the books are going, and you're meeting people. You don't know who's who. Like you said, your wife was going to greet me, and I was like, oh, is this your wife? Oh, this is not your wife. So then figuring all of that stuff out. And him introducing himself as pastor was very, very helpful. I was like, oh, the context of this, because again, my friends and I, we laugh at certain things. We'll laugh at somebody who goes out of the way to let us know they're a pastor. But then in this situation, I was like really grateful for somebody to go in out of the way to let me know they were the pastor. Because I was like, hey, I got these books. Is there any place you prefer me to take them. And of course, his heart to serve was like, hey, like I got you. Like let me grab one other guy. We'll go out to the car with you and we'll pack him up and we'll bring him in. And so like that was really, really helpful. So back to you meeting in the neighborhood, intentional or not, or just incidental that you didn't actually mention pastor in talking about like church stuff.
Yeah, no, that's just me, right? A title doesn't define who I am.
Yeah.
No matter no matter what, I am who I am, and titles to me don't.
Yeah.
Shouldn't matter.
Right. Okay. So then leadership, you've had that confirmation for 6 years in the corporate world. You're like, hey, they've recognized this. They've awarded you probably financially and position wise as far as opportunity to be able to lead others. And then when did the pastor, I guess, title become official?
Right around the same time. So about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago.
Okay. So if it was 7 years ago, it was like that monthly, hey, you were asked to be on the team.
Training, so 2 years, so 5 years. 5 years in.
So 2 years into pastors in training. Yep. And then so what is that? What were those conversations like when you're going from, hey, I'm in training as opposed to I'm now associate pastor? Does that somebody come to you and go, hey, you're ready, or hey, you've arrived? You know what I'm saying? What is that like?
That's exactly. People were asking me, man, how long are you going to be a pastor in training? I said, as long as it takes. I wasn't rushing it.
Yeah.
I wasn't rushing it. Again, my wife was very, very cautious with it. I'm like, when pastor feels I'm ready, then he'll let me know. You know, like it's like a coach kind of thing. And then one of the other pastors came up and he says, I think these guys are ready, and so that's essentially how it happened.
And so what was the conversation with you? Like, what did they tell you?
Yeah, so pastor said, you know what, I think it's time. Both of you guys are ready.
So it was at the same time with you and your buddy.
Yeah,
Ralph.
so me and Ralph, both of us. And
okay.
Like I said, we were already filling the pulpits other places, and they're like, hey, these guys, these guys need to be given that title, right? So, they're not just saying ministry leader. No, they're associate pastors, Mighty Fortress. So we're representing our church, going out and filling pulpits other places. Yeah.
Okay. And then, is there a ceremony or is there a process?
Right,
like,
so,
what is that? What is that like?
So it was just simple, and I love simple.
Yeah.
Hey, in front of the congregation, these are the guys. Introduce us and the family. Get prayed over. Give us a little certificate.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Okay. Respect.
Yeah.
And then looking back though, so I guess let's go back to high school. I tell the story that you don't remember, which was the story of my basketball was taken by some upperclassmen. You got in your red truck, went after, got my basketball, brought it back to me, and like, hey, that's something that I appreciated. When I saw you, for whatever reason, that was fresh on my mind. I was like, oh, like that's crazy to remember. I told you about it. You didn't remember, but so I say that looking back, do you see kind of like that almost that foreshadowing of the calling of pastor? Like, do you see pieces of that? And again, if so, how?
So
looking back to high school, at least.
I mean, going through that entire journey, I've always been a good teacher.
Yeah. Okay.
So I could always take what somebody said and give it to you in a way that you'd understand.
Yeah.
And so I was originally saying, you know what, I want to be a teacher. And so I started my journey, and I was a substitute for the district for a minute. Yeah. And as soon as I was a substitute, I said, no, I'm not.
I'm just taking advantage of you.
No way, man. There's no way. I was a great substitute, by the way, because the kids all got the answers, But I knew at that moment this is not the kind of teaching. It's a different calling. This is not the kind of teaching I wanted. But I've always had that niche of being able to get something and teach somebody else. So all the way in IT, same thing. You learn a new process, you learn new commands and all these things, and I would take that and I would teach somebody else. And so it's just something that's always been with me.
Okay. And then, so what was high school like for you? Like you walking through it. I think we all have different experiences. You and I, even though I was talking to your parents about it, like I'd say we knew each other. We played basketball with each other.
Right.
Your mom was even saying, I knew all of his friends. I don't know you. Like again, and it's a great mom. A great mom who I know the friends. And I was like, you might say we weren't friends. We were associates. We we ran in the same circles. So, but what was it like for you looking back, I don't know if you go through much like reflection and thinking through like how that actually was as an adult or even as a believer in looking
Yeah,
at some of those things.
I don't really spend too much time in my high school thoughts, other
Yeah.
than I didn't take advantage of those years.
Hmm.
Meaning, I was top of my class all throughout high school,
Yeah.
and I felt that it didn't amount to nothing. Not that going to community college is horrible, but at the level in which I was in my class, right, top of the class every year, just breezing through school, it was easy. It didn't translate to going to college.
Right. Exactly.
And you got to think about too, like my family dynamic is only my Uncle David, my dad's younger brother, went and graduated from high school. So I'm the oldest grandson of that family, and so just graduating high school was an achievement on its own, and nobody really pushed you
Yeah.
need to go to college, and so I didn't really think too much about it, right? And so that would be the only reflection of going through that. It's just
Yeah. And then would you say one of my reflections is that it was too easy for that didn't prepare for what that next level would be
for
like.
real.
Which was like, you didn't have to study here. But then you go to college, like, like your skill set is not enough, is what I found. It says my natural talent was not enough in college to get to anything, to even pass, for me, again, and where I was going. So then it just took another kind of character that I didn't have developed from high school that I needed to learn how to develop at the college level.
Yeah, and I went to college for a couple of years, and I played in the intramural leagues. And
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I had fun with that and playing ball back when I was a lot lighter, like I talked about at church. And then I stopped going to school. I got into a relationship with my wife. We had our daughter in 2005, and so graduated 2002. And so I was like, you know what, I need to work. I need to provide for the family. So school was an afterthought then, until my son was born. It's like, you know what, this ain't enough money for me. I need to do something else. So that's when I went back to school in around 2013.
Yeah.
Finished my degree in 2016.
Come on, let's go, brother.
UIW, let's go.
Let's go, UIW. And so talk to me. So people know you invited you graciously invited me to go speak to the married couples for your church this past Friday. Talk to me how you go about that, like, especially given that my own view. So respond to it in light of this, that Christians and Christian leaders can be especially territorial of their people, their flock. And then it's like the idea of bringing somebody to do that. I always think, like, again, there's so many questions that a pastor could ask or a leader could ask as far as do we or do we not. And then to do that, and you told me a few stories behind the scenes as well as far as like what that's been like. But walk me through that for what that's like for you. And I'm not saying, hey, like, tell me how awesome I am because of why you chose to invite me or nothing like that. Like that. But I'm genuinely curious about like how you go about making that decision, because it can be delicate, and pastor and leaders can be territorial.
Right. So it starts with my pastor. So he had been he just recently resigned, but he had been our pastor for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't uncommon for him to travel and speak at other churches.
Yeah.
Even though he was our senior pastor.
Yeah.
And he would travel the nation, and he'd go speak at conferences, and he'd go speak at summer camps, and he'd speak at other churches that wanted him to come by. And he would invite pastors to our church on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And so for him, it could have been a break, but it's also the monotony of hearing the same voice every Sunday and give the church a different flavor.
Yeah.
And so that was something that we were used to. And so when they used to speak, our pastors, we used to speak at our married couples events, and they would say, you know what, man, why don't you get somebody else to speak? They knew people. So then they would say, hey, go ask this brother at this church, bring them on by. We know they're good. We know the doctrine that they preach, because you also want to make sure that they're telling the truth, right?
Right. And even with that, right, there's so many disagreements, infighting within Christian culture, so much division within Christian culture, and there's so many, and I've certainly done my share of like the infighting. Oh, like I teased the other day when we were talking about like I probably spent like my whole college years like fighting with other Christians. Like, and
Right.
it's like looking back, I go, there's so much wasted time fighting with other Christians about like who's technically right on this one doctrinal perspective.
Right.
Now I'm like, yeah, if somebody's looking to learn something and be persuaded into something that I happen to be on, I'm with that. But the debating and arguments about like doctrinal stuff, I think that virtually all of those things I think are behind me. Anyway, all that to say is you mentioned the doctrinal stuff. So with your pastor going to other places, but what was it exclusively Baptist
No.
churches?
No, I mean,
it wasn't
mostly
okay.
Christian, non-denominational. So we don't adhere to the Baptist essentially title in our church, but we have the Baptist tendencies, like you would say.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't. He would speak at different conferences for different denominations. So
Yeah. And then the doctrinal position that you mentioned earlier, like you want to make sure like they're on it. Like at what point? I mean, so again, you don't have to mention any of this. I don't want you to feel oddly pressured to, but like sometimes within Christian culture, we're like, oh, like, where do we put Mormons in this spectrum? Or where do we put Catholics? Or
Right.
again, I'm not asking you for a blanket statement about like this one entire section of Christianity, but then sometimes there are real thoughts or hesitations about, like would a church have a Mormon teacher come or a Catholic teacher
Right.
come? And like maybe not to say again all Catholics or all Mormons or whatever, but there are some groups that a number of Christians would have an uncomfortability having
Right.
somebody. And I'm going to mention the three. I'll say the Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and maybe Catholics. Or sometimes there's questions on like should we is it as beneficial as it could be if we just avoided this?
yes. So yes, we believe in a certain way of worshiping God,
Yeah.
and so while our other denominations have their ways, we believe in ours.
Right.
So I say we try to stay within those guardrails, and we definitely, I think one of the deacons from our church, he said, we don't want anybody up there saying God is a purple dinosaur and then we start singing,
right.
I love you, you love me. We definitely want to stay away from that.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, that he's got a lot of wisdom, so I'm gonna trust my brother there.
Yeah. Right. So, and there's been so much so I'm gonna tell you a story. I was podcasting with a lady I had met at a business meeting, and she was telling me that her church that she goes to was going through a what's they going? Oh, they were like disintegrating. Like the church was like kind of like going their separate ways. This is 2019, I believe. And then she tells me they're looking for a church. So naturally, that's always like a green light for, yeah, invite you to my church,
Yeah,
right?
come on over.
So she looks at our church, and then our church has some roots, and I don't know how much you know about some of like the Church of Christ. There's some roots, back there, right? So then like and she was telling me her growing up in a Baptist church, she was like, oh, like she's like, I don't know if you realize how much like these two groups, and this is our forefathers, she was talking about how and how much animosity and hostility there were among the two groups. It was to the point where the Church of Christ, church camps and the Baptist church camps, and what they would ultimately, even if they were across the street from each other, but they would indoctrinate each of their children that the opposites were not saved and going to hell. Like they say they're Christians, but based on their belief on this one, slice of the theological perspective, that they're lost, we're right, and they both believe that about each other. So very like Capulets and Montagues, Romeo and Juliet style stuff. So I would say that because again, those are just real. It's a real history of conflict that can happen. So she's like, hey, like she just told me, hey, I can't go to somewhere that has any kind of roots, and I was like, respect, like. And then she was like, hey, so like, where do you see me? And I was like, I'm not going to list you like as a non-believer or a heretic or something like that. But I also can respect people who do. Like people on different sides of the aisle, there's an amount of zeal that I respect. And I think when sometimes people take certain positions, I think I've even told them, like, yeah, I think I think you would have to believe I'm a heretic based on, how strongly you feel about that. And I don't think there's a way for you not to if you feel that strongly about, certain topics. But anyway, all that to say, it's a really fascinating thing within like Christendom, how much division there can be, how much infighting could be, and then how territorial in particular people could be when it comes to
Right.
stuff.
I remember taking, when I was at UIW, I was taking a Religion 1 and Religion 2.
Yeah.
And the professor was a pastor.
Yeah.
And so you're learning about all the different religions out in the world, even the one with the spaghetti monster. I don't know if you heard of that one.
No.
It's called Pastafarism, man. It's
No.
It's an actual religion with the spaghetti monster as their god.
Okay.
Anyway, well, he starts asking questions, and you go through baptism for all the different religions, right? There's, do you get baptized but sprinkle on the head?
Yeah, right.
You go full immersion like Jesus, baptism by fire and ash and get covered, right? And why do you wear white and all these things? So you go through it, and he started asking simple questions because you talk about are they following a religion or are they religious?
Yeah.
And so when you think about most of the people, let's just pick on Catholics. I grew up Catholic.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say pick on, but I'm gonna touch there.
Yeah.
Most of the time that you do things, it's more habitual than religious. Well, why do you put ashes on your forehead? Well, because my grandma did it.
Yeah.
But why? Well, because her mom did it.
Yeah.
But why do you do it? Well, that's why. They don't know the meaning behind it or
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
what it is that they do it for. Well, why do you kneel and stand and kneel and stand? Well, because that's what my grandma did, right? It's always a grandma.
Yeah, right,
It's always
yeah.
a grandma, right?
Yeah.
And so most of the time when you talk with people, they don't really understand why they do what they do. And so, that's one of the things that we try to teach, or I try to teach my kids. It's like what we follow and what we believe in. It's nothing that I am saying personally. It's the Bible itself. And
Yeah.
so that's what I try to tell the kids. And so you can get into the different parts of it, and most of those people who you ask questions why they do what they do, and they don't really know
Right.
why.
Right. Yeah. No, it all gets interesting. I think with again, I've had plenty of people. I've had Pentecostals say, "Oh, you didn't get the baptism of the Holy Spirit." Then, okay, just on that alone, they're like, "Yeah, you can't be saved." I'm like, I respect the zeal, but yeah, I probably I disagree because there's an element of there is an element of each one of us, and when you walk with other people who are living, again, this life, again, a Christian life, and it's almost irrefutable. Like, so I'll use you as an example. I don't know how much you talk about everything, and I won't go too much into your details, but the amount that you and your wife sacrifice, like the fruit of love and sacrifice that I just witnessed in your life, I'm like, to me, I'm just seeing the Holy Spirit bear its fruit, right? So regardless of where, like, we might, have these kind of, cut the hair,
Right.
different ways.
Right.
I go
Split
like
the hair, yeah.
but I see the fruit of the Holy Spirit, and there's a exalting of Jesus. There's a believe in Christ. There's there's a upholding the scriptures, and I'm going, okay, cool. Like if I'm interviewed by God, I'm going, yes, this is my brother in Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now, but I could understand the way a number of people go, hey, like you got to be doing it you have to do what I did in the order I did it in for the purpose I did it for, and you have to do it because it's what I did, how I did it, in the order I did it. So yeah, those kind of three are often like at play within like Christendom as far as like sources of infighting.
We had a conversation recently, and let's talk about the thief on the cross.
Yeah.
And this is what I always go back to
Yeah.
The thief on the cross was not baptized. The thief on the cross didn't tithe. He didn't serve in his church. He was being crucified on the cross right next to Jesus.
Yeah.
But he believed that Jesus was who he says he was. He defended him against the other thief.
Yeah, for sure.
And all he said was, remember me. And he went to heaven with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I always point back to that all the extra stuff is when you're saved, you want to serve and you want to give and you want to do all these things. Those are all extras.
Yeah.
But the thief, on his dying day, just professed his love for God and said, "Remember me," because he believed him.
Yeah.
And so that's powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think about there is a lesson I've been kind of cooking up for like the last year and a half, and it's called like salvation evaluation. And there's one way I used to do that. Like if I was doing a salvation evaluation, what would that look like, right? And it's like walking through what I would have done, how I would have done the last 5 years ago, or how I did it 10 years ago, and then how I've done it a year ago. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's shifted. And like studying outside of like, hey, like who, like, I'm not saying for me, it's never like never draw the line, but like how quick we draw the line as far as some groups, as far as if you believe that or you think that, you can't. You're outside of you can't be saved. God's grace doesn't cross that line, and that's always like a wild thought to me when somebody makes the claim that no, God's saving grace doesn't cross. It doesn't cross. It doesn't cover that belief or that part of it. But I think. So I mean, I'll talk about Catholics in a good way. So I was involved with prison ministry for years, right? And but by God's grace, and Christian Flex or whatever, right? I was involved in prison ministry for years, and I remember going to one of the orientations, right? And you went to this orientation because every couple of years you have to get reoriented. They want to make sure you're protected and you're equipped for being in that setting with the people who've done those things and who can tend to want to manipulate some of the volunteers. So they do it in equipping class like every 2 years. And the event was at a Catholic church, which is, again, I was like, dang, like there's this, Jesus taught it in Matthew 25. I was in prison, you came to visit me. I was in prison and you didn't come to visit me, like the sheep and the goats. And Jesus' language is like this everlasting like consequence as far as how we live our lives. And so I'm going to this Catholic church when there's so many Catholics there who are preparing and getting ready to do prison ministry. And I'm thinking, like, oh, that's crazy. Like how I might have 5 years ago or 10 years ago drawn the line on them, like, and gone, y'all believe too many things that I would see as problematic for me to, put you, within God's grace. But then I go, like, how many Catholics just in this one group were getting oriented to go do prison ministry, to do something Jesus said, hey, treating people, the least of these, this way he's lifting it and exalting it. And it just made me think of the number of believers that sometimes are just not involved in anything. And then it's like, and I don't say that they're not, I don't say that those people aren't unsaved. And I'm like, maybe these people are even doing more. So when you meet people across the aisle when I've met people across the aisle who I might have written off, but then I see back to the fruit of their lives that's showing me Jesus. I'm seeing like that manifestation of Jesus walking and living and how he wanted us to operate. It does soften me up from like that zealous kid when I was in college trying to fight everybody about, hey, my one group is on and y'all are all off, So anyway, that was something to walk through. So let me ask you this: like, I know you're in the Mary's ministry, and Mary's is also connected to kids, and it's not necessarily youth, but like, what is the culture around like dating outside of your church, right? So it's a member dating
outside. That's a good one because you want to tell people that like, I got a daughter.
Yeah,
you need to date a Christian man, or
right?
A Christian boy,
right?
We ain't no men around her yet.
right.
But you want what's best for your kid,
yeah,
right? As a parent, and when you come to terms and realize that there are some good people, good genuine people, and you talked about it this Friday, that are doing Christian things, not knowing they're doing biblical things, right? Things of the Bible, and so you want to do that. Now it's highly recommended, not required, that you date somebody with your own beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's just, you both believe that
right,
Jesus is Lord and that salvation and you pray to him and there's, all these things, right? So you would say it's recommended. Now, I ain't your daddy if it's other people to tell you who to date.
Right.
And you know this. And growing up, not everybody always listens to their parents.
For sure.
But you just want somebody to, from I'm just looking at it from a dad. Like,
Yeah.
you just want your daughter or your son to date somebody with the same beliefs.
For sure.
Now, if they don't, I just think it's gonna be tougher.
Yeah.
My wife didn't date a Christian; she dated me.
Right.
And I was far from Christianity.
Yeah.
And I say this because I tell her, I said, you know better, babe. You knew better than you knew better when you met me. I was dealing dope. I was doing drugs.
Yeah.
I was doing all these things, and you were well aware of that. And you should have went the other way. And she didn't. And you get into this whole thing where girls think they're gonna save the boys. Well, I'm gonna save them. Well, I'm gonna change them. No, you ain't. It takes a come to Jesus moment to do that for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's it's the recommendation.
Right, which I think that's fair, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but that's certainly the safe answer. Now, I guess what I'm asking about is also like when people dating inside the church or dating somebody from another church, and like what is that like? Because like it's clear, I think any Christian parent wants their kids to date other Christians, you know, and other people who are like practicing it. And again, some people do it, some people don't. Again, your case study is an interesting one with you and your wife because like it's like nobody would say date the wild dude and he'll become a pastor. Yeah, it can happen sometimes.
It can, but then here's the thing: it's like, well, Mom, you did it,
right?
Look at you and Dad, y'all are okay, and, and you know, it's like no, but we're the small number, right? We're the minority, not the majority, and so we're just trying to set them up, but you know, man, I really don't have a comment on the dating other people in other churches kind of thing. I just say find somebody that relates to you, that loves God, and see how that works out. And Jesus in the middle, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, okay.
Right, that's the safe answer. I go again. What we do say is don't be stealing people from other churches. Right?
In what way?
Like, so, you know, you're talking about dating people and, you know, then they come to your church or you go to their church.
Yeah, flirt to convert or flirt to, yeah.
So don't take other people's members, you know, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to steal your numbers.
Okay,
Bring other people that don't know Jesus to church.
Right.
Anyway, I'll leave it there.
No, I have that's back to my salvation evaluation thing, which is kind of like how many conversions, I'm gonna say this, how many conversions we count, and really we just brought somebody from a Catholic to a Christian. I'm like, like sure, like I'll be happy for anybody who's like doing it, you know, our way. But it's like, like how about the people who are actually really lost, the people that are actually sick? Jesus came for the sick, not for the healthy. You know, right? Like, he came for not for the righteous. You know, so
and when he preached, he thinned the crowds.
Yeah. It's a. So I'll respond to the idea of like, hey, like navigating those conversations with people of like, there's a few analogies that come to mind as far as if somebody asked a younger couple or even anybody who asked about dating outside of our group, right? And it's some of the things that it's like, look, like I don't recommend you dating some people in our group. Because, you know, I know a little bit about what's going on in their life because they chose to tell me. Right. Now, I'm not going to tell you about their personal stuff, but the idea that anybody would ask me, I'm going to say an analogy of cosign a car that they're going to be responsible for paying payments on for the rest of their life, but for you to ask me to cosign. So to be clear to anybody, I would tell somebody who is a part of our group, there's people I wouldn't co-sign here. And you're asking me to co-sign somebody elsewhere? And I'm like, I pray they are God-fearing. And so if I'm talking to a sister and about her dating somebody outside, I'm like, my Bible tells me when or if you become that individual's wife, you're going to submit to him in everything. I don't see a way around that verse. It's a tough verse. I don't know anybody who does it perfectly, but it's still in there. Just like the husbands are called to love and give up of themselves, to give up everything, that's including sacrificing every comfort, every convenience, and including your last breath, like Jesus did for the church. Like, so to the sister, I'd say you probably want to find somebody who, one, you're willing to submit to in everything once y'all get married.
Amen.
And I'm not going to walk with everybody outside of our church. I'll walk with people inside our church, and sometimes I'll get fellowship with people who are, who are not, and we'll have those conversations as well. But then two is when you're looking at their life, if he as a married man is supposed to sacrifice for you to give up every convenience, every comfort to including his last breath, then I'm looking for a man of sacrifice. If you're asking me what do you look for out there? Now, again, you get into, hey, but he's a Catholic. I'm like, again, if he wants to have some spiritual conversation with me, I'm willing to have him.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to co-sign anybody. I won't co-sign everybody here. I'm not going to co-sign everybody out there. And I think that's where I think sometimes the culture, I think, I try to listen to criticism and like deal with it appropriately. Like some people go, oh, well, like one criticism we've had over the years is that we're too controlling. As far as people dating outside, I'm like, I don't know what anybody else has done. I know how I am. Now, if you're saying it's controlling to tell you that I won't co-sign anybody and everybody, I'm okay with that label of controlling. But if you're saying control, like sometimes I also ask, like, what does that even really mean? Like, how is somebody actually controlling you? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's my own perspective on that and on that conversation.
Well, I mean, you talked about controlling and the culture now, bro. Like you other podcasts where it's a group of women on there, and you talk about dating and now they don't want to. I don't need a man.
Yeah.
This culture of
yeah.
I'm not going to submit to no man, and all these things, and you hear that, and you talk about being lost and not understanding what it actually truly means.
Right.
To submit, and we'll throw that around like, ladies, you need to submit to your man. And,
yeah.
But it's actually you need to be a man that a woman wants to follow.
That's true. Yeah.
You gotta want to be that. So when you put it in different contexts and you say it this way, it's like you need to choose a man that's gonna be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And why do you keep choosing these busters?
Yeah.
And that's why things are going wrong for you in your relationship.
Right. On that other side, it's an interesting thing as far as men, Christian men dating outside of their what we call it their denomination or whatever. It's a similar thing. Is, hey, does she have a gentle, quiet spirit, a submissive spirit? And like the idea is y'all eventually are going to go to one church. Like, so, hey, like, is she going to submit to you coming here? Or are you going to, accommodate and go over there and then like be ready to like embrace that, and I've had situations where people, have gone to other groups and try to figure out how to like, how to stay involved and how to be connected, despite people going elsewhere and all of that, which is a whole like different thing. Cause you're like, you're shepherding people, you're leading people here. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm not cutting you off out there, but it's just our regular meetings. You know what I'm saying? I see you at our meetings. But that's one question I did have for you is like with COVID, did you guys see an impact? Like what was the impact of your ministry with COVID and all that?
So ministry, let's talk about marriage ministry. We went COVID, we had our first Zoom married couples meeting.
Yeah.
And we sent out the link and we said, look, we're not going to let COVID stop us from from at least having a study together. And we had like, your laptop picture, and you had all these different little tiles of all the couples with their heads in there. And we still had our study. And I remember I was speaking on it. It was Philippians 4, and we're talking about don't be anxious for anything. And that's at that time when people are just so anxious about what's really happening with COVID. But our church, we shut the doors for our church, and we already had an online presence.
Yeah.
So we already had the Facebook Live and the YouTube thing, and so we were positioned to just transition to that. We also did outdoor services. So we, in our parking lot, set up the speakers and everything, and, the social distancing and whatnot. People still wore their mask, whatever they were comfortable with.
Yeah.
And we still had services. So, we weren't going to let it stop us from worshiping and hearing the word. And so we did some, real quick, we transitioned, and then being able to do outside, trying to be, the recommendations of the CDC and all that good stuff, and still have our service.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Numbers for us didn't dip.
So same. It was the same.
Everything stayed the same
before, during,
and I would
after?
say now, if I had to just say that, I think we are just slightly above our numbers when it comes to where we were before.
The pre-COVID numbers. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And now we know that there were some churches that suffered from it and closed
Yeah,
their doors
yeah.
and never reopened. So
Right, and as I talk to different leaders, people have gone virtual and like I've never come back. They're like still virtual, which again, like there's something about hey, come to virtual if that's the least you do, but like sometimes the church leaders there's a wrestling match of like, hey, like do we count? Like how do we count membership? You know what I'm saying? Like you haven't come to anything in a really long time. We don't want to like take you off, but we don't want to keep you on if it's like what is this?
Right.
Like what is the dynamic? But do you guys do it? I saw on your website, on the website, is it the youth do something midweek every
Right.
week?
So we have our youth group on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
On Wednesdays.
And then so adults don't have any one meeting during the week?
No. We've transitioned to life groups. So we
Yeah.
have life group studies, and we have probably about 6 or 7 life group homes that are hosting. And,
Yeah.
And they go through, right now we're going through a book called, it just left me, but Sharing Christ, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going through it week by week, and we do a little study on that. And so right now I'm a life group host, me and my wife, and so we have our group, and we've been doing it for 3 years.
Okay. And how often is that, or what is that?
Every Tuesday at my house.
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
Okay. But that's not for the whole church. Anybody who's interested in?
Anybody who's interested in being a life group.
Interesting.
And we went through the book of Galatians, Ephesians, Colossians, and it's 1st and 2nd Timothy as a group, and we just meet and kind of I'll prepare and I'll give the study, and we fellowship for a little bit, and we go through the Bible and ask questions and talk about things and
so so I guess the rhythm for you guys then would be Sundays, every Sunday, every Tuesday, and then every Wednesday for the youth.
Wednesday for my 2 kids.
So then you're taking them to the church building.
Yep.
And then one Friday a month.
One Friday, every 3rd Friday of the month is our married couple study.
Got it. And then
my wife is also doing a discipleship book where she meets on Wednesdays, the same day as the youth. So she'll typically, if I'm working or whatnot, she'll drop off and she'll do her discipleship. It's a book that they're going through with
yeah.
And I just started mine on Saturday morning.
Another thing?
Yeah,
on Saturday?
Saturday mornings.
Brother, we'll put a little sound effect in here for you.
Come on. Yes. No, we got to stay connected, bro. Like it's easy to to get complacent.
Well, we've done the culture for us. We've kind of been where when we were leading the singles professionals ministry. It's every Sunday, of course. Then it was every Tuesday. Then it was every Wednesday, and then it was some Fridays or Saturdays, and like once a month we'd fast and break fast on Sunday evenings. And so that, and like looking back, we're like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, the message preparation for Wednesdays was like crazy. Like it was crazy to prepare. It was like, hey, let me just trust God with the devotional time that I'm having and share what I'm learning. There was the extent of it. But there is some of us, and I would put myself in this camp, where we felt like you're doing so much like ministry, and there's other aspects of life that I think we're neglected in that arena. So then I'm curious, like how other groups do it, and so we're currently then our small group now, they meet twice a month on Friday nights. Midweek or the Wednesday is it's every other week. I mean, they alternate men and women, and of course the Sundays. So I think it's less than it's been. I think it's as little as it's ever been, compared to where it was at its busiest. Where it was Tuesday, Wednesday, some Fridays, some Saturdays, and then Sunday mornings and then Sunday evenings.
Yeah.
But yeah. But that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and there's some times where, man, you're tired.
Yeah.
And there's some Tuesdays where we're with the kids and we gotta let the life group know and just send out a message and say, hey, today we can't meet. There's something going on. But luckily for us in the marriage ministry, we have a team, so we just don't do it by ourselves. And so having a team and a good surrounding around you push through it.
Yeah.
But we make sure that we keep time for each other, and we're with the kids at every one of their events because we also help. Like I'm a band booster, so I'm moving.
Y'all sacrifice a whole
Man, you know what? It's
whole different level, brother.
You know, but our busy schedule. We just had this conversation with my brother, and he's like, "Man, I'm tired just listening to what you." But we've lived that life, you know, since our kids have been little, and so for us, it's typical.
Yeah,
it's typical. So our rhythm is always moving.
Yeah. Looking back for me, not saying this in any way to apply to you guys, but I think there were pockets of time where I think there's a common debate. Like if you go back, what would you do differently? Some people are like, oh, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I was. It didn't happen exactly. And I was like, I don't know. As like my personal perspective is like maybe you could have been better than whoever you are now. But I look back and I go, is there anything I would have done it differently? And I personally would have, and I would have probably spent a little bit more time with my siblings when they were younger. And I think like that, there's certain windows of time for people. Like I think of whether it's siblings or kids, like in that rare amount of time you're able to pick them up, like, pick them up, and it's like normal. It's like, yeah, they're little kids, you pick them up. And so like when I see my nephew all the time, I'm like, yeah, I'm picking him up as much as he'll let me pick him up, I'm going to pick him up.
Right.
And I know that this phase is eventually going to be over.
And it happens quick, bro.
Yeah. So I look back at that busyness and I go, was I there enough for my little brother and my little sister? And I go, my answer is no. Like, again, and it's debatable. People, we could chop it up any which way. But I'd go, yeah, I would spend more time there. And for a time period, I had a really narrow definition of like, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness. And it was like, seek first the kingdom is a church function, which is like a lot of that other stuff. But I think I just would have been more involved with my little brother and sister. And maybe, nieces and nephews too.
The one thing that for me, I said when I first got saved, I said, man, why didn't this happen sooner?
Yeah.
It would have saved so much trouble and turmoil and my craziness, and my marriage would have been probably that much better because of it. But then I sit there and I reflect. I'm like, no, we went through it for a reason. Yeah. And we get to share that testimony with others. You talked about what'd you call it? Christian flex.
Yeah, the Christian flex.
So what I always talk about, and I've said it from the pulpit plenty of times, is have you ever been in a testimony fight?
In what way? I'm pretty sure no, but what does that mean?
You might have, where you're around a couple of brothers and you start talking about where God took you from. Oh, man, I used to do this. Oh, yeah? Well, I did this, this, and this, and God took me from there. Well, I was this bad, and then I call it a little testimony fight. You try to one up each other with a good testimony, and in the end, as long as you don't glorify yourself and you say God took me from it, then we'll be okay, right?
Yeah. Now, do you guys affiliate with any other Baptist group? Like like the SW, is it Southern Baptist SBC? Southern Baptist Convention is like supposed like the biggest denomination on the Western Hemisphere.
I know we.
Or biggest Protestant.
I don't know what I just know this San Antonio Baptist Association, and there's another one that we give to that helps. And so we're under their guidance essentially. And right now, since our pastor has since resigned and he's moved on, and we're in the process of getting a selection team together to get our next senior pastor in line, and we go with some of their recommendations and we make sure that through the bylaws and stuff like that we're following it correctly. Starting to learn more about what all that is.
Yeah, you're right.
And so that's kind of what they do for us. And
so then when you say you guys give, so is there like a fee to be a part of?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know the amount.
Yeah.
I know we give a fee. I think it's monthly, and
then there's resources and connections.
So I know there's one of our deacons, he really attends their classes that they have. We used to have luncheons and there's different speakers and stuff that you can take from, but there's classes and resources available that they provide. So it's not just, hey, I'm gonna give you money and don't get nothing from it. They give so much back. Yeah,
okay. But to your knowledge, not connected to SBC.
Not that I know of.
So it's probably not even connected to Southern Baptist.
I probably should know this.
Oh no,
but I don't.
No, it's good. No, it's because it's such a large. again, they say it's the largest Protestant denomination in the Western Hemisphere. I think I could, fact check that. But the reason I brought it up is because they're in the news fairly often. They're in Christian news fairly often. Oh yeah, they kicked out Rick Warren's church because like Rick Warren has women pastors and SBC doesn't believe in that. And then it's like it's in the news and it's relevant because it's feminist movement. It's like all of this like see Christians are abusing their power. The Christians are about the patriarchy and all of this stuff like kind of like kicks up dust in the news. And again, you guys aren't connected except for the name that's Baptist. That's connected with I guess their second word, Southern Baptist Convention. So I guess there's no tangential or like shame, like our embarrassment as far as like, hey, that's not us, that's
not
y'all.
Us. I don't know if we claim any of that.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny because I think I feel I'm not Baptist, but I think I feel some of it, like the Christian stuff, like I guess I feel some of that connection from, hey, like they're like maybe the analogy would be they're like third cousins, because like we're not like in the same groups, but they're like third cousins, and I care about how other Christian groups are operating or perceived in the public eye.
I love to learn about them too and see.
Yeah. And then do you guys do like church camps for the kids?
Yeah, so there's been a couple times we went to a few camps. Me and my wife helped chaperone. Went to New Mexico with the youth. We do marriage retreats as well with our church. So it's been a couple years, and our church members have been, hey man, when y'all gonna do another retreat? And so we've used some of the Baptist retreat centers in South Texas, like Palacios, Southern Baptist Encampment, Highland Lakes Encampment. The
retreat centers are built specifically for retreats. Is that just like built into the name?
So they'll have the motel style rooms that you can get into, and so we've done them. I think we've done Palacios a few years. We've done Highland Lakes a few years. Alto Frio a few years.
And are those also connected to that same association?
I don't know if they are, but I know some of them are considered Baptist encampments.
Yeah.
So that's the name, the title that they have. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so your best and worst experience preaching?
My best. I can go straight to the worst. That's what comes to mind first. And I would say it was just more of a personal thing. So
yeah.
For anybody who's ever been just speaking in general in front of people, and you're looking out into the crowd, when somebody's just straight up asleep.
Yeah.
And you have somebody just, staring off into their phone, just not paying attention. So that you can deal with. Yeah. But when you got somebody mean mugging you from the church pew,
yeah,
that's one thing. And I know to read people, and let me throw something out there funny to see if I can get a smirk or a smile. Man, just no budge.
No budge.
And they were just mean mugging, chewing that gum hard.
No, but so when you're up there, you can process like all of that, because that is a process, because you're thinking of, hey, the point I'm making, what I'm saying, maybe where I just finished, maybe where I'm going, and like kind of almost reading people's faces and thought bubbles.
I believe, and maybe it's just natural to me, but I read the room.
Right.
And I've seen my pastor do it. I've seen his dad do it, who I believe is one of the best speakers ever. And you can tell when the crowd gets a little restless, or they're just, man, when's his brother going to stop? And I just think you got to read that. So you got to know when, if you're going to go too long, or you're going to be too short, or, for me, I could see that. So I try to throw a little joke in there, or be a little serious, or, even when the Spirit is moving, though. Yeah. And you're speaking on something, and you stay in that moment. Don't leave it. Let it marinate a little bit. And so all of those things, I try to be aware. Yeah. Yeah. I might miss it. I know I will.
Yeah, right. No, there are absolutely moments where I've looked out and I got the the arms crossed, and like,
And
You know.
it was a sister, bro.
Oh,
She was
sister.
just mean mug. And I couldn't break through.
Yeah.
You know, and it bothered me.
Well, one of the times I had somebody sleeping, it was a family member who was visiting church, unfortunately. And I'm preaching, and I'm like seeing her like asleep, and I'm going,
Your own family.
my own family, bro. But I'm looking at my notes, and I'm like, do I have anything exciting coming up? And I'm like, no, it's all, I said all the exciting stuff. So she fell asleep during the good part, the good parts or
Right.
whatever. And it is kind of bothersome. Like, should I say this louder? You know,
Right.
like, should I raise my
Right.
voice
My
randomly?
pastor would say he likes to bang on the table. Wake up, sleepy church.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And he's good at reading that. So I really learned a lot just from watching.
Yeah.
But a best moment from the pulpit, Christian speaking.
Yeah.
You know, the best moment I had was having my son come up and read scripture one time. I had him read the scripture.
Yeah.
Something about a child's voice, reading the scripture and I just said, hey, Pops, you want to read the scripture? And he did for me. Yeah. That was one of the best moments.
That's special. Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, good, man. Well, those are the big things I wanted to cover with you, brother. Any last words before we wrap up?
No, man. I know you talked to me about testimony and whatnot, and for me, there's always a lesson learned. You know, we got to end on a good note.
Yeah.
You know, there was years before, and I had to give Pastor Jerry a shout out. He was the founder of our church, Mighty Fortress Church, before Pastor Sammy came on.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed him. Years before I messed up and before I got saved, and he married us. He'd make me go to counseling sessions, bro. And no lie, I'd show up drunk Saturday mornings to counseling sessions with him. But I never felt judged by him. Never felt judged by him. And going through those and the Spirit stirring in me, I should have learned easy back then. Right. And God was stirring and tugging at me to come, and I didn't. And I had to learn the hard way. It almost cost me my marriage. But in the end, I just got to say God is good. And he took me from where I was and brought me to where I am. And he's still working in me. He ain't done. And the Christian walk ain't easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't ever think, well, I'll become a Christian, life is easy. No. What was it you said on Friday? Something about messed up Christians? I got to put that on a t-shirt.
There's messed up saved people, messed up lost people.
Messed up saved and messed up lost. We're all jacked.
Yeah, the messed up saved people. We're trying to help the messed up lost people become messed up saved people. So maybe they become a little bit less messed up, but in the end,
you do become a little messed up. The great thing
a little
is
less messed up. Yeah.
The great thing is you're not alone.
Yeah.
You got other brothers and sisters in Christ, and you got Jesus right there with you.
That's
so
real.
He walks along with you.
That's real.
So yeah.
I was going to tell you something. What was it about? You had me going. I read this comment by my buddy Matt. He said, he was talking about my family member who he said, the family member was praising so hard in your dreams you don't even know, Derek.
Wow. That's, you know what? That's a way to positive spin. Come on.
I'll give you just one to close. It was, so we showed up to a baptism. And dude is like, he smells drunk to me. He's getting baptized. And I'm like, and he's kind of acting a little different. But he says he's not. He hasn't been drinking. He hasn't drank in a minute. And I go, like, this is a weird situation. Like, do we baptize him or do we not? Again, on this side of the aisle, that's where, on this side of it, we go, oh, yeah, for forgiveness on this side of the aisle. And then, like, it's like, forgiveness is good, and he got the Holy Spirit or whatever, again, on this side of the aisle. But it was a wrestling match of, like, what's the best reason to not do this? And then should we do this? Is this irreverent? He's saying he hasn't. And, like, how do you disrespect somebody at their word who's saying that they haven't been? So I said, hey, bro, so I tell everybody to go back inside. I'm like, all right, let me pick a phone call. I don't know what to do. Let me call somebody who has more ministry experience than I do. And they're like, all right, just ask him again. And then so I hang up, ask him again. And he's like, no, I haven't been. And then I'm still kind of confused. And you think you can smell it. And I'm like, I'm not like a detective kind of person. Right. I don't really know.
You're not the canine unit.
Right. And then so I've called the minister again. I'm like, hey, like, what do I do in this situation again? And I just finished calling him. He's like, I don't know. I guess you just baptize him. And then like he let God figure that out.
For real.
So we baptized him, and a few weeks later he passes away. So we don't know, like, there's people who know him have said that he was always with the cup with some vodka or something inside of that. So we were like, yeah, we don't know. We don't know, but it was those weird ministry situations that come up. You brought up the being drunk, showing up to the counseling thing. There's a drunk showed up to the baptism, and you don't know what to do. But
man, I'll tell you, I showed up drunk to church plenty of times.
Yeah,
or still reeking of alcohol.
Yeah. So, well, there was another time in college where a couple of guys were, they had just, I think they had just got high and they were trying to come through, and then I was like, hey, this seems kind of weird. Like, do we not let them come to the Bible? They wanted to come to the Bible study, and it was like, yeah.
You just got to be cautious.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, like. Yeah, hey, so some of the ladies are gonna be there. Hey, this is probably not a good time for you guys. Right. You guys smell like it. And again, looking back, what I've done, I might have done that differently. Looking back, but then it would just felt like, hey, we're just trying to protect everybody.
Right, and you got to think of that too, right? You know, it's bigger than just you.
Yeah,
and yes, you want people to hear the word in whatever situation they're in right now in their life, right?
Yeah, right.
And hopefully they're genuine when they come, because we've had people show up to our church, like that. And we greet them at the door and we sit them, but you got a close eye on them. You're not too far from them, so
yeah,
you know, you do have a congregation and some people to protect. But man, those are tough.
Yeah, man,
those are tough.
Well, good, brother. Well, hey, thanks for hopping on. One of the things I would like to do is have more pastors on and more church leaders. So I appreciate you doing that. If you know, and I'll tap you if you want to come through when we have, you know, maybe a few more churches. I think it's educational and informational to have other guys from other churches as well. Mm-hmm. I'm digging that a whole lot. But any last words before we wrap?
No, man, much appreciated, bro. And I'm digging the setup. I love seeing it. I said, you got to make me look skinny on this podcast, though, bro. I'm a little thin.
Yeah, we'll wrap with that one. But everybody, thanks for tuning in. Grateful for Aaron Alonzo.
Appreciate you,
sharing
bro.
That Baptist perspective.
Come on.
Doing his thing, his transformation. But we'll see you on the next one, everybody. You guys have a good night.